At 7:12 a.m., a tow truck with state lien enforcement stenciled on the door idled in my cul-de-sac like a patient shark. The driver clipped a neon orange tag to the windshield of a silver Porsche 911 that read "Notice subject to immediate tow," while a teenage boy in pajama shorts screamed into a phone and a woman in a bathrobe brandished a binder as if the Constitution were printed inside. The neighborhood joggers slowed, the sprinklers hissed, and somewhere a golden retriever stopped mid-poop. When the hydraulic winch began to sing, I sipped my coffee and waved. I didn't have to say it, but I did with a cheerful tone. "Morning, Denise. My name is Marcus Hale, a quietly content homeowner in Foxglove Estates, a little development stapled to the edge of Maple Harbor where the HOA newsletter is thicker than most magazines and has a gossip column disguised as community notes. I keep to myself, grill on Sundays, read on the porch, keep a tidy garage with masking tape on the floor marking my exact parking space like a runway. The HOA president is Denise Carowway, who has the smile of a real estate billboard and the soul of a parking meter. She believes Foxglove is a gated utopia and she's the gate. Her son, Trevor, is an 18-year-old with just enough trust fund to confuse horsepower with personality. Every school morning, Trevor would roar into my assigned curb space, clearly painted Hale 14, and abandon his Porsche there like a trophy arrow sunk in my front yard. The first time, I left a note that simply said "wrong spot." The second time, I left a firmer note with a copy of the HOA map. The third time, Denise left her own note stating "common courtesy suggests flexibility, Marcus. Community thrives on cooperation." By the fourth time, she'd escalated to emails copying the entire board with messages like "Marcus is creating an inhospitable atmosphere for young residents." Then came the surveillance campaign that would make the NSA jealous. Denise installed a neighborhood security camera pointed precisely at my driveway, claiming it was for community safety, but the angle only captured my property. She started measuring the angle of my garbage bins with a laser level at 6 a.m. every trash day. I received violation letters for an off-tone doormat because it said "probably watching TV," a non-approved rosemary hedge even though it came with a house and was planted 15 years before the current HOA rules, and a dangerously loud mailbox hinge that squeaks like a timid mouse. The violations became increasingly absurd as the weeks went on. I got written up for excessive bird attraction because I had a bird bath, improper leaf distribution on my lawn during autumn, and my personal favorite, aggressive garden gnome positioning. The gnome in question was a jolly little fellow holding a welcome sign that apparently violated subsection 43.6 regarding anthropomorphic yard decorations. Each violation came with a $50 fine that I refused to pay on principle. Meanwhile, Trevor's morning routine became a performance art piece where he'd park in my spot, toss his keys, and jog to his carpool, leaving me to nose around his Porsche like a plane taxiing around an aircraft carrier. When I complained during an HOA meeting, Denise clasped her binder and said with an authoritative tone, "As per Section 8, subsection 12, street parking is community property during school commute windows, which we define as fluid." The board nodded as if she'd quoted scripture. I smiled and started asking very specific questions about city ordinances and property lines. That weekend, I attended a city workshop on street regulations because I'm the sort of person who copes with pettiness by getting certified in it. The workshop was held in a musty community center basement with flickering fluorescent lights and folding chairs that squeaked every time someone shifted. There were 12 of us there, mostly small business owners dealing with parking disputes, and one very enthusiastic municipal employee named Gary who treated city codes like they were sacred texts. Gary's presentation included a thrilling PowerPoint with clip art from the 90s, but hidden in slide 37 were 3 sparkling facts that made my entire week. First, our street is maintained by the city, not the HOA, which meant Denise's kingdom had borders she didn't control. Second, the city has a permit system for assigned curb spaces near hydrants and corners, and my curb, painted and recorded from decades ago when the original developer filed the plans, was one of them. The permit had been automatically renewed every year through my property taxes, a detail I'd never noticed on line item 473. Third, parking in a permitted space without the permit in the windshield isn't just rude. It's towable, ticketable, and if unpaid, subject to a statutory lien after 72 hours. Gary explained this with the enthusiasm of someone revealing the location of buried treasure. On Monday, I placed my city permit placard in the windshield and waited. Trevor parked in my spot as usual. I called the non-emergency city line, gave the permit number, and a polite officer wrote an equally polite ticket. Denise intercepted it and tore it up in front of me, smiling like a kindergarten teacher confiscating a slingshot. She said with a condescending tone, "We'll handle our street, Marcus." City Hall did not find that cute. On Wednesday, a municipal compliance officer visited Denise and informed her that tearing up a city ticket is, shockingly, not jurisdiction she owns. Denise told him the HOA supersedes the city in spirit. He told her the city supersedes the HOA in law. Trevor received 2 more tickets. He didn't pay them. On Friday at 7 a.m., a tow order printed with my permit number was issued. The tow truck rolled in at dawn like a symphony starting with the bass section. I stayed on my porch with my coffee and a book titled Understanding Liens for People Who Wish They Didn't Need to. Denise came sprinting down her driveway, bathrobe flapping, wielding that bottomless binder of bylaws. She shouted about community harmony and threatened legal action. The tow operator, a cheerful pragmatist named Yolanda, held up the city order and said with a professional tone, "Ma'am, this is a municipal enforcement action." Denise called the police. The same compliance officer arrived with a body camera and a weary smile. He explained it again for the people in the cul-de-sac that the HOA can regulate paint swatches and fence heights, but the city owns the asphalt. The Porsche went up on the tilt bed like a silver loaf of gluten-free entitlement. By lunchtime, Denise had flooded the HOA message board with urgent updates accusing me of orchestrating selective municipal harassment. I responded once, attaching the city code page and a link to the permit database. Silence. Then a new post from Denise announcing an emergency hearing at 6 p.m. I brought cookies just to be neighborly. At the emergency hearing, Denise attempted to censure me for weaponizing bureaucracy. Her gavel was a scented candle. The room smelled like vanilla warfare. She declared with an imperious tone that the HOA would pay Trevor's tickets from the Community Spirit Fund. The treasurer, a retired accountant with the expression of an exhausted owl, cleared his throat and said matter-of-factly, "There is no such fund." I stood and calmly presented a stack of documents, including the city's towing log, Trevor's accumulating storage fees at the impound lot, and my favorite, a notice of lien. If the fees weren't paid within 72 hours, the vehicle could be sold at public auction or scrapped. Denise laughed with a dismissive tone until the officer from earlier, who'd come to observe, said seriously, "He's not joking." 48 hours later, Denise discovered that her HOA authority card doesn't unlock the impound gate. She arrived with a letter on HOA letterhead demanding release of the vehicle. The clerk slid it back and asked for the registered owner, proof of insurance, and payment. Trevor had none because the title was still in his dad's name in Arizona, and the insurance had lapsed after too many spirited accelerations. On the morning of day 3, Yolanda texted me a link to the auction page showing lot number 218, Porsche 911, non-runner pending fees. No bidders appeared. The fees exceeded the book value by thousands. At 4:59 p.m., the lot exercised its right. The next photo on the listing showed a flattened silver pancake strapped to a forklift heading to the scrapyard. That evening, we all heard a metallic groan from across town, as if the gods of German engineering sighed and moved on. Denise screamed on the message board with messages in all caps. I posted a single broom emoji as my only response. The fallout was immediate and deeply educational for everyone involved. The city fined Denise $1,500 for obstructing enforcement and another $2,000 for misrepresenting authority to a law enforcement officer. The HOA's insurance company sent a stern letter stating they wouldn't cover any legal fees related to her actions since she'd acted outside her authority. Her husband, who'd been mysteriously absent during all of this drama, suddenly appeared at the next meeting looking like a man who'd just received his credit card statement. The HOA board, suddenly fond of bylaws after discovering which ones keep them out of court, called an emergency vote of no confidence. The meeting was standing room only, with neighbors bringing lawn chairs and one enterprising teenager selling lemonade in the back. When the motion was called, the vote was 7-1 for immediate removal. The one vote was Denise, who tried to vote twice because she said with an indignant tone that she represents the community and herself. When the final tally was announced, her face turned 3 shades of red, then purple, then a color I can only describe as apoplectic burgundy. She clutched her worthless binder to her chest, knocked over the vanilla candle gavel, and stormed out screaming that we'd all regret this decision when the neighborhood fell apart without her leadership, that property values would plummet, and that she'd be contacting her lawyer who happened to be her cousin from Tampa who mostly handled traffic tickets.